Welcome to the Practical NLP podcast number 38 with me, Andy Smith. In the last 3 episodes we learned the meta-model questions for getting more specific and for, if you will, challenging vagueness. Now it's time to go the other way, communicating at higher levels, vaguer, more abstract levels of the hierarchy of ideas, so that you can communicate directly with your listener's unconscious mind, as well as their conscious minds, and influence them at the unconscious level. The set of language patterns we're going to use to do this is called the Milton model, because Richard Bandler and John Grinder modeled them from the great 20th century hypnotherapist Milton Erickson, the father of indirect suggestion. Now you might be thinking, I'm using NLP in a work and business context. Why would I be interested in something modeled from a therapist, especially a hypnotherapist, however much of a genius he was? Well, this is why. Whatever area of business you're in, and whatever your job role, you can actually learn a lot from a therapist, especially a hypnotherapist, because there's one thing that therapists are very good at, if they know what they're doing, and that is influencing people to change their behavior. When you get down to it, that's what a therapist does. When I was a hypnotherapist, people came to me wanting one thing, to change their behavior, and change it fast. Whether that behavior was smoking, or eating too much, or unwanted emotional responses like phobias, they all wanted to change their behavior. So if you want to influence people in any way, to get them to buy your product or service, or to motivate your team, or to influence your employer to see that you're ready to move up to the next level, or even if you're a parent and you're telling stories to get your kids to go to sleep, and you want to do that effectively, rather than the hard way of doing it all through their conscious minds, you need to know about this stuff. Now, another question that may occur to you is it ethical to influence people through their unconscious minds? Can I actually do this, especially in business? I've got news for you. You're already doing it. Everyone uses these patterns all the time, but most people don't know they're doing it, so they get unpredictable results, and they don't realize the effects they're having. How can that be? Listen to this. You cannot not communicate. I'll say it again because it's important. You cannot not communicate. Everything you say is communicating. In fact, you could even say that everything you say is a hypnotic suggestion, to the effect that it structures and sequences internal representations in the listener's mind. Even if you don't say anything, that's still a communication. Imagine if you held a meeting with someone and then didn't say a word throughout. So people who don't know about Milton model patterns are like unskilled amateur hypnotists, influencing people and placing suggestions in their minds by accident without realizing it, quite often influencing their listeners or readers in unhelpful directions. You don't have a choice about whether you communicate or influence people, so it's worth knowing the Milton model patterns so you can influence people with intention and know what you're doing. So what is the Milton model, and what's so special about it? When Richard Bandler and John Grinder discovered the meta-model, they thought they'd found the holy grail of change work. Questions you can ask to get people to see how their distortions, deletions, and generalizations match up with the specifics of their actual experience? Fantastic. Then they went to see Erickson and observed him working with people, and they were into a whole different way of looking at the world. Instead of asking questions to get his clients to be more specific, Erickson was deliberately using vague language to take his clients off into trance. He was actually using language patterns that the meta-model classed as violations, and the clients were benefiting. What he was doing, at a very big chunk level, was using artfully or precisely vague language to get his clients' unconscious minds to access their inner resources. The unconscious mind decided the specifics of what those resources were, because Erickson believed that your unconscious mind knows best what's right for you, even if it sometimes needs a bit of help to find that knowledge. You might be thinking, well, I'm not a hypnotherapist and I have no interest in being able to put people into trances and have them accept anything I say to them, or even in having ways of having their unconscious minds access their inner resources to solve problems. So why do I need to know about the Milton model? Here's the important thing. If you ever want to change the way people feel or influence them in any way, even if it's just getting your kids to calm down or cheer up a colleague, to the extent that you've had success in doing that, you've almost certainly been using some of the Milton model already, without realizing it. If you want to convey your belief in someone who works for you or that you're teaching, if you want to raise the morale of your team, if you want to paint a picture in the customer's mind so they can see the possibilities, you're going to find it hard to do that without using the Milton model. And when you do use it and practice it with immediate results, but getting better and better as you study it and master it, you'll find that you're becoming more effective at putting ideas across and changing people's minds in a way that honours their values. You're not controlling them because, long term at least, that just isn't possible. You're effectively communicating with them in a way that helps them to see possibilities, become aware of the information they need, and achieve their outcomes in ways that dovetail with your outcomes and benefit both of you. So in the meta model, we've seen distortions, generalizations, and deletions in language patterns as signs of limitations and limiting beliefs. In the Milton model, we see how you can use those exact same patterns, just slotting in different content or different words, to help people get past their limitations and to motivate and influence them in a particular direction that works for them. So, as most of the Milton model is exactly the same patterns as the meta model, just used differently, then if you heard the previous episodes about the meta model, I know you're expecting the first pattern to be, yes, mind reads. I knew you were going to say that. If you've got our NLP practitioner manual with you, turn to page 46 where we've got the Milton model patterns laid out in detail, or you can find them in the podcast show notes. But before you do, remember what the first 12 patterns will be. I know you've got mind reads as number 1. What are the rest? Stop the audio for a moment while you remember. Okay, first up are the distortions. Number 1, mind reads. And I know you remember that mind reading in NLP is when someone is speaking as if they know what's going on in the mind of the listener. And just by saying you know what's in their mind, you can put the idea or feeling or even action that you're talking about into their head. I expect you're wondering, how does that work? Well, if you weren't wondering before, you probably are now. And you could be thinking, how can I use this in real life? And right about now, I know that you're thinking of real life ways that you can use it. And pretty soon you're going to have a couple of ideas for how this pattern can put ideas in your listener's mind. Number 2, lost performative. Or can we just say value judgments? It's good if we do. Lost performatives are value judgments where the person who originated the judgment is left out and it's just presented as a fact. And it's okay to do that most of the time, and even better when you spot someone doing it. You can use it to validate the way someone is feeling or what they're doing. It's a good thing to feel comfortable, which encourages them to do more of it. Or you could use it to pace something that your audience is feeling, or that might even be an objection in the broadest sense of the word, before suggesting a direction out of it. It's natural to feel a bit confused at this point, before you decide the best thing is to just accept it and go with it. Number 3, cause and effect. What's the relevance of this to influencing? If you ask people to do something, their minds automatically demand a reason, and mostly they won't move on until you give them a reason. Now here's the interesting thing. It's not that important if the reason makes sense, as long as there is a reason. Research backs this up. The famous Xerox study by social psychologist Ellen Langer went like this. There's a Xerox machine, a photocopier as we call it nowadays, in a library with a long queue of people waiting to use it. You go to the head of the queue and say, "Excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the Xerox machine because I'm in a rush?" What proportion of people would let you in, according to the study? Well, it was 94%, so nearly everyone. They repeated the experiment lots of times in different libraries. They also tried this different wording. "Excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the Xerox machine?" What proportion would let you in? Well, it's around 60%. So what's the difference between that 94% in the first one and the 60% in the second? The difference is the reason or the cause in the first statement, because I'm in a rush. And then they also tried this wording. "Excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the Xerox machine because I have to make some copies?" So you've given a reason for jumping the queue, but it's not really a valid one. Everyone queuing for the photocopier has to make some copies. Care to have a guess at what proportion would let you in? It was 93%. So the difference between giving a valid reason and giving a reason that's not valid is just 1%. And either one is over 30% more persuasive than not giving a reason at all. Our minds just think in cause and effect linkages. And once they see that structure, they're not so bothered about whether the cause is really responsible for the effect. If you realize that, then you're well on the way to becoming a master of influence. So that if-then structure is another one you could use. Notice it works equally well if you leave the then out, because your mind is expecting to find it once it sees the if. You can use other words than if. Once you realize that, you'll be a master of influence. It's still saying that realizing that point will cause you to be a master of influence. It works equally well in the negative. Until you realize that, you'll never be a master of influence. And then there are other words like as long as A, then B, or while A, then B, which you can use to imply a cause and effect relationship between A and B. As you listen to this part of the audio, your unconscious mind is storing away these language patterns for later use. Again, you can imply cause and effect using a negative and the word unless. Don't take the time to practice using these patterns unless you want a dramatic increase in your power to influence people. Here's one more format which goes the more A, the more B, or the more A, the less B. The more times you listen to this audio program, the more you'll find yourself wanting to try out the Milton model in real life. The more you practice, the easier it gets, or the more you use the Milton model, the less resistance you'll meet. That's a very common pattern, and now that you've heard it, you'll spot it all over the place. That last sentence was yet another version of the cause and effect pattern, by the way. Number 4, complex equivalence. This is that, or this means that. You're saying that something is the same as something else, or that it's a sign of something else. Did you remember that's what complex equivalences are? If you did, that's a tribute to your persistence. And if you didn't, that means you need to listen to the last few podcasts about the meta model a few more times. When you link two separate things as a complex equivalence, you get the listener to look at the first thing in a different way. People sometimes get confused when they start learning NLP because it's such a different way of looking at things. Confusion just means your mind is taking in new information before it's fully integrated. In fact, confusion is a natural step in learning, comes right before understanding. Do you need any more examples? Listening to this audio means that you're committed to your own development, or in a sales context, the fact that you're here means you're serious about buying. Number 5. Presuppositions. Remember, presuppositions are what you have to assume to be true in order to make sense of what's being said. Listen to these examples. Here's a great question you can use in problem solving. Where is the problem on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1's the worst it's ever been and 10 is how you're going to be when you solve the problem? What's presupposed there? That you're going to solve the problem. When you've told me what you need, we'll be clearer about how I can help. There are 2 presuppositions in that one. You're going to tell me what you need, and there's some way that I can help. So that's the distortions part of the meta model. Mind reads, value judgments, cause and effect, complex equivalences, and presuppositions. Same patterns as in the meta model, but you're just using them in a different way. In the next episode, we'll learn about how Milton Erickson used generalizations and deletions to guide his clients into trance and help them access their inner resources. If you need more NLP before then, or if you wish to start exploring trance states yourself with my hypnotic personal development audios, visit nlpwebstore.com. See you next time.